began our study of the covenant people in the New Testament thinking about Israel at the time of Jesus. Israel is ruled by the massive Roman Empire. Religiously, the Jews are united by the Torah, and yet it's the interpretation of the Torah that divides them into different sects. There are two main sects. The Pharisees, who are mostly middle-class people. They follow both the oral and written law in every aspect of life, and they believe in life beyond death. And the Sadducees, who are mostly priests and the wealthy. They follow only the written law, and they don't believe in the afterlife. Preserving the temple is most important. Understanding these two sects of Judaism helps us understand how Jesus causes enough threat to the Jewish leaders that he ends up crucified. Matthew writes his gospel wanting the Jewish people to know that Jesus is their long-awaited Messiah. Jesus calls people to radical discipleship. Simon, Andrew, James, and John leave their fishing nets and relatives, and Matthew leaves his tax office. When Jesus says, "Follow me," he means leaving something behind and walking into the unknown, ready to learn, to witness, and to serve. Discipleship requires total commitment, often going directly against the current culture and sometimes even against our religious understandings and traditions. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches followers to speak only truth, forgive without measure, love enemies, give without getting credit, and live a righteous life of gratitude. The mark of discipleship was, disciples accept Christ's call to radical discipleship, abandoning sham and pretense, becoming vulnerable, and entering the ministry of making disciples. Today we look at the Gospel of Mark. Our theme word is good news, and our title is The Hidden Messiah.
Mark's Gospel follows the story of 12 disciples who just don't get it. Like all Jews of their day, they expected the Messiah to come in victory and to restore glory to Israel. The disciples were thrilled when Jesus healed the sick or opened the eyes of the blind. They rejoiced when the crowds gathered, but they were confused when religious leaders criticized, when opposition mounted, and when Jesus didn't display the kind of power they thought he should. Over and over, Jesus says to them, "Don't you understand?" In some places, it's frustrating to watch the disciples fumble along their journey, clueless to the true power and purpose of their Savior walking beside them. At other times, though, I have to admit that I'm a bit comforted by how oblivious they are. After all, aren't we often unaware of the true purposes of God, even when they're staring us in the face? So Mark's Gospel is a journey. The disciples following Jesus, learning slowly, somewhat reluctantly who Jesus is, what kind of a suffering Messiah he really was. Just like with Matthew's opening lines, it's important to pay attention to how Mark starts things off. The beginning of the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. Right from the beginning, he tells us his purpose, to show that Jesus is the Messiah and the Son of God. Instead of opening with the story of Jesus' birth, we get the story of John the Baptist announcing Jesus as the Messiah and then baptizing him, when a voice from heaven affirms that Jesus is indeed God's Son. As Mark shares the story that confirms Jesus' amazing identity, there's a pivotal moment in chapter 8. Pay close attention to it. Jesus asks, "Who do you say that I am?" Peter, impulsive as always, blurts out, "You are the Messiah." But when Jesus says he must go to Jerusalem, where he will be rejected, suffer, and be killed, Peter rebukes him, saying, "Never, Lord." Peter didn't want a suffering Messiah. He wanted a triumphant warrior Lord. Later, he even denies that he even knew Jesus when Jesus was arrested. The entire Gospel of Mark is an attempt to show that you can't understand Jesus without understanding his suffering and death. His identity is only fully revealed in his crucifixion. The kind of power Jesus shows us is the power of a suffering Messiah, one who gives everything, even his life for us. There's a sense of urgency in Mark's writing. He uses the word immediately a lot, urging us forward to show us the importance of the impact of Jesus' actions. It's as if Mark is in a hurry to get us to the cross. There's also a sense of mystery. Jesus goes around healing all of these people and then urging them not to tell anybody. It's pretty puzzling. No wonder the disciples were confused. It's only when they get to Jesus' suffering, death, and resurrection that any of them can understand what Jesus has been trying to tell them, that his all-encompassing love would cause him to suffer, be crucified, and be raised in victory over the grave. They would also begin to understand what he meant when he called us to take up your cross and follow me. Discipleship can't happen without self-denial and commitment to give everything for a Savior who gave everything for us. We are called to follow the suffering servant and to take up our own crosses and serve joyfully and faithfully.